And back then, of course, there were few cars. I remember the sort of first car appearing in the street, and I know it's a terrible cliche, but everybody looked out for one another. People's doors were open and things like that. It's such a change from today. Makes me sound older than I am, doesn't it?
Grandma and grandfather used to live in Town Gate, 27 Town Gate. So when I used to come home from school, I used to have to go to my grandma's and wait for my mother coming out of the mill at 4:15, and then we'd walk home together. Like I say, I used to come from school and go into my grandma's, and my grandfather had said to me, "I want you to do some shopping for me, and then you can have a bowl of neck of mutton gravy." So I used to say, "What did you want?" And he used to say, he said, "Well, you go fetch me a pint of mussels, and on your way back, call it the Two Dutch, and get me 2 light bottles."
And in our street as well, there used to be a rather exotic lady lived across from us. I think she was probably Italian or something, very dark, Sophia Loren type thing. And she used to shout for her son, who was called Marco, "Marco, Marco, come in, your tea's ready." And she was a bit of exoticism in the street. And then, of course, we always had the lady down the bottom who peeped through her curtains. And, you know, as kids, we used to say she was a witch and all this kind of stuff. Nobody ever saw her except for the curtains moving. That sounds like I'm making it up, doesn't it? But it was true, and it was delightful. Yeah. Well, my dad was in textile engineering, more or less all his life. I remember him telling me it's probably one of the last generations, but you know, you could finish with a firm one day and start with a new firm, you know, Monday after. He used to make machines for the carding industry, for textiles and wool. And I seem to, and all people who worked in that sort of environment, he'd lost all the tips of his fingers, not the full things, but always the little tips of his fingers had been nipped off. And my dad was a great one for brass banding. He was a great brass bander, as is my brother. My brother's a very accomplished brass player. And he was playing the trombone apparently the night I was born. Of course, back then, you know, fathers didn't go and stand in on the birth, did they? My mother always said his banding were more important than anything else. And he played the brass instrument more or less up until he finally died. He used to have terrible trouble with his teeth, you know, through years of abuse and obviously being of a different generation. And he suffered terrible pain, but he wouldn't have them out or have them seen to, because it would have stopped him playing, so he put up with his pain. I remember him, he used to drink whiskey and roll it round his mouth to deaden the pain, but he was terrified of dentists and he wouldn't go. But as long as he had his front teeth, he could play his instrument. My mum trained to be a hairdresser, and she used to cut our hair as kids, and we detested it because she used to have these old clippers and stuff, you know, the electric ones that they use nowadays, the buzzing one. Well, there were hand ones in them, and used to nip your skin, and as tiny kids we absolutely detested it. And she nowadays, if you go to a hair salon, you know, they're all very gentle. My mother believed in vigorous hair washing. So you come out a bit bruised, but very invigorated. When we sort of washed up on these shores, a lot of the shops were empty, and you can't get away from the fact that it did look a bit run down. There's no doubt about it, and so you wonder why you stayed or why you came. But Marsden has a lot going for it, and there's the scenery. You don't have to walk very far outside your door, and you've got the moors, which I've always liked. It always gives me a great pleasure if I'm, you know, driving some to the airport or going that way, and you can look across the moors. It's really terrific. It always cheers me up. Even when it's dark and dismal, you know, they change completely all the time. And because when we arrived here, one of the big things that was going on locally was the Mechanics' Hall. It had fallen into an extremely dilapidated state, and most people, I think it's fair to say, in the local community wanted it pulled down and I think turned into a car park. And I remember going when we first came, you go along to public meetings to try to get into the community and blend in. And there were some very vociferous exchanges about this place because many people wanted it knocked down. But there were a few people who wanted to preserve it and have it rebuilt. Unfortunately, I think probably for everybody, they won the day in the end. I think there were lots of grants got. A lot of people worked very hard and they managed to renovate it and build it up. And it's turned out to be really good for Marsden because it really gives a place an identity. And had it gone, I think it would have been a bit of a shame. We did have, until quite recently, a shop on Brome Road there, and it was run by a little old lady who, unfortunately, whose name I've now forgotten. But that was a real time warp shop. People came from miles around to see it. I mean, she used to sell coal and things like, again, that people will never have heard of, dolly blue and starch and firelighters and donkey stones for putting the brown edge on your step like people did in the past. My mum used to wash the step and the windowsill and put this donkey stone round it. They were very, very house proud in them days. And she used to sell all this stuff. I didn't even know they still made it. And she had a small coal fire in there, and everything was covered in coal dust, and she wrapped everything in brown paper with string. You can't believe it, can you? It was terrific. But when she died, of course, that all went as well. Yeah. Change is inevitable, and really it's for the good, because if things don't change, things just stagnate, don't they? And of course, Marsden, that's happened to Marsden a lot. As things have opened up and more people have come, the comers in begin to outnumber the indigenous population, of course. And there is this thing that we like to carry on about, comers in. And I've been here nearly 25 years, and they say, I'm just about accepted. But of course, that's not really true. The people around here are extremely friendly. We made some great friends, and people have been very good to us right from the off. And sheep wander the streets and stuff like this. It sounds like I'm making it up. The sheep wander. I used to sometimes in the summer and stuff, when you've got plants outside, they come and eat the damn things and you have to shoo them off. And of course, they're so used to cars, they're just not scared, they don't care. They just take their own time and you just have to wait until they amble off. In fact, there was two here this morning when I came back from the market, walking up and down the street at their own pace like they didn't care. It's quite nice really, isn't it? It's quite nice.
Did a stint myself at Bank Bottom. Winding and twisting I did, but I didn't really care for the winding. It was I don't know, I just didn't take to that. But the twisting, I loved the twisting. That was brilliant. You could have up to 420 ends going at once, and you've got to keep them all running. In fact, the lady who learnt me to tie my knots, because they were all hand knotted and everything, and to tie your knots. She lives just across the road here, and she comes on a Friday morning for her hair doing now. So it's a small world, isn't it? But yeah, I used to love that. And if somebody was struggling, you'd go and help them and get them all, And if you were running a colour off, you had to run it off and then set a new colour in. And they were all on, even dolly bobbins they were, I think, them. And it's like a thick wooden bottom and a thin bobbin and then a smaller top. You used to have to put them all on and doff them all off. And we actually did the yarns for the refit from when the QE2 came back from the Falklands. Yeah, beautiful kingfisher coloured, lovely turquoise and emerald colours. They were gorgeous, all the colours, yeah. So we did a lot for that as well. And then we also did a big contract for the hospital blankets and things like that. It was fine worsted weaving, not heavy, so fine woolen, so yeah.
When I was about 14 or 15, I used to help the gravedigger dig graves.